This story is titled, My Wife's Parents Spotted Me Buying Expensive Gifts for a Woman, Turned Her Against Me Until She Packed All Belongings and Children, Moving Back to Their Home. But these presents were actually for our anniversary, though it was too late, and I was secretly relieved. Hey everyone, my name is Thomas and I'm 41 years old. Have you ever experienced that feeling when your entire world collapses in just 72 hours? When everything you've built over 15 years just crumbles away? Your marriage, your family, your reputation, all because of one misunderstood moment. That's what happened to me last month, and I'm still trying to understand how my life went from perfect to completely destroyed all because I wanted to surprise my wife with an anniversary gift. I was living what I thought was the perfect life. My wife, Catherine, Kate for short, is 39, and we have two amazing kids. Sophia, who's 8, and Oliver, who's 6. We own a nice house in a quiet suburb of Sacramento. I work as a civil engineer with a great career, while Kate works as a pediatric nurse. We had the kind of marriage other couples envied. 15 years of genuine happiness built on mutual respect and deep love. Kate and I met in college, and everything clicked from our first date. We both had careers we loved, and we built our life brick by brick, supporting each other through every challenge that came our way. Her parents, William, 67, and Martha, 65, lived nearby, just 15 minutes away. They were always deeply involved with our kids. William is a retired high school principal, the kind of father-in-law who drops everything to help when you need it. Martha was always there for Kate, especially after both pregnancies. I used to think of them as my second parents. Our marriage wasn't perfect. No relationship is. But we always faced problems together. We had occasional disagreements about household stuff and parenting decisions, but we never went to bed angry. Communication was our strongest point, or so I believed. That's what makes everything that happened next feel like a nightmare. Our 15th anniversary was approaching, and I had been planning something special for months. Kate had always dreamed of having her grandmother's sapphire ring reset into a more modern design. Her grandmother had passed away 5 years ago, and the ring had been sitting in a safe deposit box since then. I had found an exclusive jewelry designer who specialized in custom pieces, and I'd been working with them secretly to create the perfect anniversary surprise. Looking back now, I can see how small coincidences led to this catastrophe. If I hadn't been so focused on keeping the surprise, if I had just told Kate where I was going that day, if her parents hadn't driven by that jewelry store at that exact moment, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What I didn't know then was that Kate was having a rough time at work. A young patient named Hannah she'd grown close to was taking a turn for the worse, and she was carrying this emotional burden alone. She didn't want to worry me with it. Meanwhile, Martha had joined a new church group that was filling her head with stories about unfaithful husbands and broken marriages. These separate threads were about to weave together, creating the perfect storm, one that would tear my family apart. I never imagined my surprise would end like this. My wife moving out, my children taken away, and my in-laws spreading vicious lies throughout our community. The worst part? I never saw it coming. The week before everything imploded, I noticed subtle changes in Kate's behavior. She was staying later at work, which wasn't unusual given her dedication to her patients, but there was something different about her demeanor. She seemed distant and distracted. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd give me a tired smile and say she was just exhausted from work. I should have pushed harder. I should have seen the storm clouds gathering. That same week, I had 3 secret meetings with the jewelry designer, Victoria. The ring was coming along beautifully, and Victoria was helping me plan the perfect presentation. These meetings took place during my lunch breaks, so I had to lie about my whereabouts. I hate lying, even white lies for surprises, but I wanted everything to be perfect. Those innocent lies would later be twisted and turned into something sinister. Martha was acting strange too. She started dropping by our house more frequently, always when Kate was home, but I was at work. I thought nothing of it at the time and assumed she was just being a supportive mother during Kate's difficult time at work. But Martha was also attending weekly meetings called Marriage Preservation at her new church. These were led by a woman named Eleanor, who was 61 and had built a following by exposing unfaithful husbands in the community. Looking back, all the signs were there. Martha started making odd comments during our Sunday family dinners, little jabs about men, how they can't be trusted, how they always stray after 15 years, and how women need to protect themselves. I laughed these off at the time. That was my second mistake. I should have recognized the seeds of suspicion being planted in my wife's mind. Then came the Tuesday before everything fell apart. I had my final meeting with Victoria to pick up the finished ring. It was absolutely perfect. Her grandmother's sapphire now nestled in a modern platinum setting, with tiny diamonds arranged like stars around it. I was so excited about the surprise that I didn't notice the black SUV driving past. I didn't see Martha's shocked face in the passenger seat as William drove by, or the way she frantically grabbed her phone. What I didn't know then was that Martha was already warning Kate about patterns she'd been noticing in my behavior. The occasional late lunches, the cleared browser history on our shared computer where I'd been researching jewelry designs, my slightly distracted demeanor as I planned the surprise, in Martha's mind, warped by Eleanor's influence. These weren't the actions of a loving husband planning an anniversary gift. They were classic signs of infidelity that she'd been learning about in her meetings. That evening, I came home and found Kate unusually quiet. She barely touched her dinner, and when I tried to hug her, she flinched away. I assumed it was related to Hannah's case, her young patient going through a rough treatment. I gave her space and told myself we'd talk when she was ready. That was another mistake, because while I was respecting her space, Martha was filling it with poison. I went to bed that night still thinking about the perfect anniversary and how Kate's face would light up seeing her grandmother's sapphire transformed. Instead, I was about to learn how quickly trust can unravel and how devastating assumptions become when filtered through the lens of fear and suspicion. What happened next would shake the foundations of everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my in-laws, and about the fragility of trust. But the real betrayal hadn't even begun. Wednesday morning started normal enough. I kissed Kate goodbye as she left for her early hospital shift, made breakfast for the kids, and dropped them at school. I had no idea that by evening my life would be unrecognizable. Around 2 p.m., I received a text from Kate that made my blood run cold. "Don't bother coming home tonight. I know everything." My hand started shaking. I called her immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again. Nothing. What did she mean she knew everything? My only secret was the anniversary gift, which was supposed to be a happy surprise. Then the messages started flooding in. First from William, telling me I was a disgrace and that he always knew I would hurt his daughter. Then from Martha, a long paragraph about seeing me with that woman at the jewelry store and how she'd finally caught me in the act. My mind was spinning. Did they think Victoria, the jewelry designer, was something else? I felt sick to my stomach. I left work early, my hands trembling so badly I could barely drive. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed something wrong immediately. Kate's car was there, so were William's SUV, and a moving van. A moving van. My heart nearly stopped. I rushed inside and found Kate and Martha packing boxes in the living room. Sophia and Oliver were sitting on the stairs, looking confused and scared. When they saw me, they ran toward me, but Martha quickly pulled them back, a look of disgust on her face. Something I'll never forget. Kate wouldn't even look at me. She methodically packed our photo albums, our whole life together being sorted into cardboard boxes. I tried to explain about the ring, about the surprise, but Martha cut me off. She'd done her research, followed me to the jewelry store multiple times, and seen me meeting with Victoria. She had even taken photos that without context looked exactly like what she had convinced Kate they were. Evidence of an affair. Here's the cruel twist. The evidence Martha presented wasn't just about the jewelry store. She had constructed an entire false narrative around random moments from the past few months. The time I ran into an old college friend, Diana, at the local coffee shop and chatted for 10 minutes. Martha had been there, and now it was proof of suspicious behavior. The late nights I'd spent working on the ring design on my laptop became secret messages to other women. Every innocent moment had been twisted into something sinister. What broke me wasn't just Kate's refusal to listen. It was the realization that she'd been watching me for weeks, interpreting every action through the lens of suspicion her mother had created. The night I'd worked late to finish a project, she'd driven by my office to check. During my lunch meetings with Victoria, she'd had her friend Claire from the hospital follow me. My own wife had been investigating me while I worked to create the perfect surprise for our anniversary. I tried to reach for the ring box in my briefcase to show them the truth, but William stepped between us, already calling someone on his phone. His lawyer friend, as I would later learn. The same lawyer who helped Kate file for emergency custody the next day. As I watched them pack 15 years of memories, I kept thinking this had to be a nightmare. How could a loving gesture turn into this? How could people who had known me for over a decade suddenly believe I was capable of such betrayal? But the worst was yet to come, because what Martha set in motion that day would spiral far beyond our family, reaching into every corner of our lives and community. Through it all, the sapphire ring sat in my briefcase, its perfect setting now a mockery of the life I thought I had. That night, I slept in my car outside our house. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving the kids, even though Kate had taken them to her parents' home. I kept calling and texting, trying to explain about the ring, about Victoria being a jewelry designer, about the anniversary surprise. But Kate had blocked my number, and my messages to Martha and William went unanswered. The next morning, I went to work, an empty shell, shocked and desperate. I discovered how quickly Martha had been working to destroy my reputation. My colleague David, whom I'd known for over a decade, wouldn't even look at me when I walked in. I later learned that Martha had called his wife the night before, warning her about me. She'd spent the evening calling every couple we knew, spreading her version of events. The real gut punch came during lunch when I checked my email and found a message from Kate's lawyer containing temporary custody arrangements and a restraining order. A restraining order. I couldn't go within 500 feet of my own children because of Martha's paranoid delusions. The lawyer's words swam before my eyes. Pattern of suspicious behavior. Emotional distress. Protecting children's well-being. They were using my secrecy about the anniversary gift as proof of my deceptive nature. I drove straight to Victoria's jewelry store, hoping she could help explain everything. But Victoria had her own shocking news. Martha had visited the store that morning, caused a scene, accused Victoria of being my mistress, and threatened to expose her business on social media. She had already posted negative reviews claiming the store was a front for helping unfaithful husbands. Victoria was sympathetic, but asked me not to come back. Her business couldn't afford this kind of publicity. What happened next made everything worse. Remember Kate's patient, Hannah? That sick little girl? Martha somehow got in touch with Hannah's mother through the hospital grapevine. She twisted my jewelry store visits into something so sinister that Hannah's mother filed a complaint with the hospital board, suggesting Kate's judgment was compromised by her unstable home situation. Kate's career, built over 15 years of dedicated service, was now under scrutiny because of her own mother's actions. I tried reaching out to our mutual friends, but Martha had been thorough. She had joined forces with Eleanor from the church group, and together they had crafted a narrative that painted me as a master manipulator who had finally been exposed. Eleanor had apparently been watching me at church for months and now claimed she'd seen signs of my sinful nature all along. Every time I checked my phone during services or stepped out to take a work call was now being reframed as evidence of my double life. The isolation was complete. People I had known for years crossed the street to avoid me. Parents at my kids' school requested their children be kept away from Sophia and Oliver, as if my supposed infidelity was somehow contagious. Even my own mother started getting calls from concerned church members asking if she'd known all along about my other life. Through all of this, the sapphire ring sat in my briefcase, its blue stone seeming to mock me every time I looked at it. I thought about how its transformation was meant to symbolize the renewal of our love. Instead, it became a symbol of how easily love could be twisted into suspicion, trust into accusation. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I received a text from an unknown number. It was from Claire, Kate's friend who had followed me to the jewelry store. She had something to tell me, something that would change everything. But she was afraid of Martha finding out. What she revealed next would finally start to unravel Martha's web of lies. But at what cost? I met Claire at a small diner 3 towns over, where Martha's influence hadn't reached. The moment she sat down, I could see she was nervous, constantly checking her phone and glancing over her shoulder. What she told me made my blood boil. Claire had been following me that day at Martha's request, convinced she was helping a friend uncover my infidelity. But she'd actually witnessed my final meeting with Victoria. She had seen the ring being handed over and had heard our conversation about the surprise. She'd even taken photos as evidence. Photos that clearly showed Victoria explaining the ring's features and giving care instructions. Here's the part that made me physically sick. Claire had tried to tell Martha the truth immediately. She'd called her that very evening, explaining that I was clearly planning an anniversary surprise. Martha's response? She told Claire to keep quiet, that she was too naive to see the truth. According to Claire, Martha had been convinced for months that I was unfaithful and had been actively looking for evidence to prove her theory. Why was Claire coming forward now? Because Martha's crusade was affecting Kate's work. The complaint from Hannah's mother was just the beginning. Martha had been calling other parents of Kate's patients, warning them about the situation. Claire couldn't stand by watching Kate's career being destroyed by her own mother's actions. But that wasn't all. Claire revealed something more disturbing. She'd overheard Martha talking to Eleanor after a church meeting. They weren't just spreading rumors, they were strategically destroying my reputation to ensure Kate wouldn't believe me, even if I tried to explain about the ring. They had coordinated with other church members to create a network of witnesses who would claim they'd seen signs of my infidelity over the years. The truth about Martha's obsession went deeper than anyone knew. Claire discovered that Martha's own marriage to William had survived an infidelity scare 20 years ago, a misunderstanding similar to mine that had nearly torn their family apart. Martha had never truly healed from that experience. Eleanor's marriage preservation group had reawakened all her old fears and suspicions. Claire showed me the photos she'd taken of the ring exchange, clear evidence of my innocence. But when I reached for her phone to forward them to Kate, Claire stopped me. Martha had convinced Kate to join the church group's private online community, where Eleanor and other members were constantly feeding her stories about unfaithful husbands who tried to gaslight their wives with elaborate explanations. If I sent the photos now, they would just twist them into more evidence of manipulation. As I sat there staring at proof of my innocence on Claire's phone, she dropped another bombshell. Martha's campaign wasn't just about me anymore. She and Eleanor had started targeting other husbands in the community, using my case as proof of how well-respected men could lead double lives. They had created a climate of fear and suspicion affecting dozens of families. I asked Claire why she didn't just show the photos to Kate directly. Her answer chilled me. She tried, but Martha had convinced Kate that Claire had been compromised, that I had somehow manipulated her into helping cover my tracks. The same Claire who had been Kate's friend since nursing school was now being painted as my co-conspirator. Just then, Claire's phone buzzed with a text. The color drained from her face as she read it. Martha had somehow discovered our meeting. What she was planning to do next would change everything again, but this time her actions would finally push someone unexpected to take a stand. The text that frightened Claire was from William, my father-in-law, asking to meet her privately. At first, I assumed Martha had sent it from his phone, but what happened next changed everything. William had been quietly watching his wife's behavior spiral out of control. The final straw came when he overheard Martha on the phone with Hannah's mother, actively trying to get Kate suspended from her job. Something in him snapped. He realized the woman he'd been supporting wasn't the same person he'd married 40 years ago. What William revealed to us over coffee that evening shook me to my core. The incident 20 years ago when Martha thought he was having an affair wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. Martha had accused 3 different women of being involved with William. She had spread rumors throughout their previous community and nearly got him fired from his principal position. The situation was only resolved when Martha agreed to seek counseling. Now, with Eleanor's influence, all those old patterns had resurged, stronger than ever. William admitted he'd been too weak, too conflict-averse to stop Martha when she first started spreading rumors about me. He had convinced himself that supporting his wife was more important than standing up for the truth. Now seeing her try to destroy not just my life but her own daughter's career, William couldn't stay silent anymore. He had proof of everything. He'd been secretly recording Martha's phone conversations after the incident with Hannah's mother and had text messages showing how Martha and Eleanor coordinated their attacks on my reputation. Most importantly, he had Martha's diary, where she'd written about seeing me with the ring, admitting she knew it was for the anniversary, but had convinced herself it was a cover story. The diary entries were disturbing. Martha had written about how she couldn't let Kate make the same mistake she had made by trusting too easily. She wrote about how she had to save Kate even if it meant destroying her marriage. The level of calculation was staggering. She'd been planning this intervention for months, waiting for any sign that could be twisted into evidence of infidelity. But William's revelation came with a devastating detail about Kate. Our children had been asking questions about why they couldn't see me. Kate had started having doubts about her mother's accusations. In response, Martha had convinced Kate to join an intensive, healing retreat run by Eleanor's church group. The retreat was starting tomorrow. Phones wouldn't be allowed, clearly designed to isolate Kate further from any possibility of learning the truth. William had tried to talk Kate out of going, which led to a huge fight between him and Martha. That's when he'd finally seen how far his wife had fallen into her paranoid beliefs. Martha had accused him of choosing sides with the enemy and threatened to expose his own past infidelities to their entire church community. As we sat there processing everything, William's phone kept buzzing with messages from Martha. She had discovered his meeting with us and was unleashing a torrent of threats and accusations. But instead of forcing him into silence, her messages only strengthened his resolve. What William proposed next was risky. It could either save my marriage or destroy any chance of reconciliation forever. But with Kate about to be isolated at the retreat and our children caught in the middle, we were running out of options. Little did we know, while we were planning our next move, Martha was executing a desperate plan of her own, one that would bring everything to a head in the most public and dramatic way possible. Martha's final move was desperate and public. She called an emergency meeting at the church, gathering everyone from Eleanor's group along with many community members. Her plan was to stage an intervention for William, Kate, and me to expose all of us as conspirators against her. But she didn't expect what happened next. I arrived at the church with William and Claire just as Martha was mid-speech, dramatically recounting how she caught me with another woman. The room was packed. It seemed like half the neighborhood was there. Kate sat in the front row, looking pale and exhausted, with Sophia and Oliver beside her. Eleanor stood next to Martha, nodding supportively as Martha wept about her daughter, siding with an unfaithful husband. William walked straight to the front of the room. For the first time in 40 years of marriage, he raised his voice to Martha. The room fell silent as he described how he'd watched her destroy an innocent man's life, how she'd nearly ruined their own marriage with similar accusations 20 years ago, and how she was now willing to sacrifice their daughter's career and happiness for her own paranoid delusions. Then Claire stepped forward and played recordings from her phone. Conversations between Martha and Eleanor planning how to prove my guilt, discussing how to isolate Kate from anyone who might tell her the truth. The church fell silent as Martha's own words exposed the calculated nature of her campaign against me. But the moment that finally broke through to Kate wasn't any of this evidence. It was Sophia, our 8-year-old daughter, who had been digging through her backpack. She pulled out a piece of paper, a drawing she'd made weeks ago. It showed me looking at a blue ring with "Mommy Surprise" written in crayon at the top. She'd seen me looking at pictures of sapphire rings on the computer and had kept the drawing secret because I'd asked her to help me surprise her mommy. Kate's hand shook as she took the drawing. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in weeks. I finally had the chance to pull out the ring box to show her grandmother's sapphire in its new setting. The same setting Victoria had helped me design. The same ring Martha had twisted into evidence of betrayal. Martha tried to interrupt, to spin some new explanation, but William silenced her with years of pent-up authority. He announced he'd already scheduled appointments with their old marriage counselor, that Martha needed help before she destroyed any more lives with her paranoia. The aftermath wasn't instantaneous healing. Nothing ever is. Kate and I had a lot to work through. The trust that had been broken wasn't just about Martha's lies. It was about how quickly doubt had crept in, how easily external influences had shaken our foundation. We started counseling, both as a couple and individually. Martha and William began intensive therapy. Eleanor's marriage preservation group disbanded after several other couples came forward with similar stories of manufactured suspicions and baseless accusations. The church leadership formally apologized to everyone who had been affected. It's been 6 months since that day at the church. Kate and I are living together again, rebuilding our life day by day. The kids are resilient. They bounce back faster than any of us. Sophia proudly tells everyone how her drawing helped fix her family, while Oliver has appointed himself the official family hugger, making sure everyone gets at least 3 hugs daily. Kate finally wears her grandmother's sapphire ring, though the story behind it is different from what I'd planned. Instead of just celebrating our past 15 years, it's become a symbol of our commitment to the next 15 and beyond. A reminder that love means choosing to trust, even when the world gives you reasons to doubt. Martha is making progress in therapy, slowly confronting the deep-seated fears that drove her actions. William has found his voice again. Their relationship is being rebuilt on a foundation of honesty rather than enablement. Kate's relationship with her mother is more complicated. They're working through it in family therapy, but some wounds take longer to heal than others. As for me, I've learned that sometimes the deepest cuts come from the people closest to us, but so does the strongest healing. Every morning when I wake up next to Kate, every time I hear our kids laughing, I'm grateful for the truth that finally came to light. Most of all, I'm grateful for the second chance we all got to rebuild. Not just our marriage, but our entire family, stronger and wiser than before. When I face that feeling that our whole life was almost destroyed because I wanted to make the perfect surprise, I'm comforted by the fact that my daughter's crayon drawing saved our marriage, and that love and truth won in the end.